Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Tom Kubiniec. Tom, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to have a good spirited conversation about all sorts of stuff.
I am very much looking forward to it. And I always try to open with something about the guests or connection to Keep Hustling, but there's no greater introduction that I can give than to thank you for allowing Syracuse, New York to come across my desk on a bio, because as I mentioned before we went live, my family has a long history with Syracuse. My mother, who is at the time was one of the youngest Holocaust survivors, was taken in by the wonderful town of Syracuse. I go to visit every once in a while, but my mother grew up there. My grandparents lived there. So whenever I get to speak to someone from Syracuse, we could talk Wegmans, we can talk whatever else you want. But I really appreciate you from all the way up there. I'm glad at least they have internet there now that you'll be able to chat today. Your bio, and I tell everyone that they should read it, but I have a lot of questions for you. But my first question that I ask most of our guests, I'm going to tailor it a little bit to you, is your tagline or a line in your bio states, Tom is a radically different type of business leader, having never attended college or worked for another company. And then it goes on to talk about how you defy traditional logic. Okay. How does someone become a business leader without ever, I can get past the college thing, but never working for another company? Take me back.
I'll have to look at that because could be taken out of context. When I was a kid, I had a lot of jobs. I was a guitar player in high school, and I'd work in a canning factory for 2.5 months during harvest, save up enough money to live the rest of the winter and play guitar. I worked on an onion farm. I did like electronics assembly, all just simple minimum wage or better jobs when I was a musician. I had a ton of different jobs. I did run my own lawn mowing business when I was a kid. I started.
I'm from New York City. What's a lawn?
Yeah, exactly. I was in Batavia outside of Buffalo, New York. And that was just for a couple summers. I've always been hustling stuff, but the way you go from, I knew coming out of high school that I was not going to go to college. A, I want to be a musician. B, I don't learn in a classroom setting. I don't thrive there. I don't like it. I had a fun time in high school, but it wasn't an educational time for me. It was a social time. My grades were fine. My parents' biggest disappointment in life was me not going to college. My brother and sister went. One's a doctor. The other one is ran a pretty good sized cable news channel. And I was the guy that they thought. And so I was a musician in Hollywood and doing well. I developed tendonitis and it ended my career right when things were really starting to go, and it forced me into other paths. I took a job in sales. I was so bad at it, they moved me to a non-sales position. But I just kind of looked forward and I said, you know what, I can't just sit here and make $10 an hour for the rest of my life. And I looked at what guys in sales were making, who were doing well. So I immersed myself in the world of sales and took a straight commission job. And instead of practicing guitar 10 hours a day, I just went nuts learning sales. And I got good at it. It took me about 2 years. And then I quit that job and started a business in a little apartment in Panorama City, a really lousy neighborhood in Los Angeles, and just kept learning. I had 2 partners. We were all kids in our early to mid 20s. We had no idea what we were doing. But every day we got up and just got it done. When you don't know what to do something. And we just kept plugging away, consuming as much information as we could about business. And that business, 3 years later, we had 18 sales reps. I sold out to them, went off to my partners and went off on my own with a similar business, telemarketing, computer supplies to, B2B sales, Greenline Data. And I grew that company. Got into the internet in the 90s, started creating websites, developed taperack.com. Your older listeners will remember big companies had thousands and thousands of backup tapes, and they had to store them in these big metal racks. And I saw a market need as things were changing, I was able to register taperack.com. We became one of the largest sellers of tape racks in the country. And all the time, I'm just trying to learn as much as I could. I started SecureIt in 2001, just based on a phone call. I had a website that was selling laptop storage cabinets to the hospitals when the HIPAA laws came out. You had to lock all your laptops. So I created securelaptopstorage.com, poweredlaptopstorage.com, about 16 websites, all kind of spamming together to guarantee good SEO. Back in the day when you could do that. And a guy called me and said, "Hey, can you store an MP5?" I'm like, "Sure." "What's an MP5?" He was a little submachine gun. And I just thought that was fascinating. And that got me on the path to SecureIt and developing and getting a patent for a weapon storage solution that we are now the global leader in military weapon storage. Under all of this, though, and the point to listeners, those three businesses all shared something very much in common. I started them from scratch, and they all grew lightning fast to about $4 million a year in business, and they all sat there.
So there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for clarifying. I want to jump into a few steps there. First of all, I do know what a backup tape is. When I was growing up, my parents used to bring them home from the office because they were worried that something would happen to the office on Friday, and we're a small family business. So they would literally remove the tape from the server, bring it home, and then bring the previous one back Thursday. And then, each week they had like 5 or 6 tapes that they would rotate to it over it. So I do know, I just want to clarify, I'm not one of the older listeners, but I do know what that is. We're just throwing that out there for the people. One would call you the definition of a serial entrepreneur. The hunger is there, the thirst is there. I want to just go back to the premise here. And that was, you said that you knew that you weren't going to go to college.
Yeah.
Put parental disappointment aside. It was because you had the entrepreneurial itch or disdain for the classroom? Because my next question will follow on that. That's my question.
It was nothing to do with entrepreneurial niche. It was everything to do with, I want to be a guitar player. I played guitar 8 to 10 hours a day. I was playing in bars when I was in high school. And I was a young hotshot guitar player in 1983, 84. Guitar Player magazine got one of my demos, and they did an article on me as one of the best unknown guitar players. And that article, at that time, that was the magazine for rock guitar and for guitar playing. That article opened up a lot of doors for me. I ended up packing up, moving to Los Angeles, and my career really started to take off. And I could really play well. And I developed tendonitis, and it just killed it. And I was dead in the water. So everything I had worked for at that point was gone. It took me about 6 months to realize I'm never going back to this. And that's when you've got some options there. I can go home and say, I got to figure something else, or, what are you going to do? So I didn't want to go back to New York. I was in LA. I said, I'm here. I got a job in sales that would hire a telemarketing job selling typewriter ribbons because they'd hire anybody. And I just started working. And, how do you go from selling typewriter ribbons to the guy who designs, weapon storage systems for the Navy SEALs? I just kept turning over rocks. I just kept moving forward, and I'd see an opportunity. I'd see something that interested me, and I would just go, let me go investigate that. I want to learn more about that. And that's how I got into, selling tape racks, selling laptop. I just said, oh, that's really cool. It's kind of a niche product. There's a need there. Let's pursue that. Let's pursue this. And maintaining enough of blinders, enough of a narrowed path that I didn't go way outside. A guy once told me years ago, do what you know. And for me, it was telemarketing and then B2B internet sales. This was long before Google. This was back in the 90s. It was really a different world, but we were really good at it.
I think that there's a lot in the story that can inspire the listeners, and I want to unpack it together with you. First, I think that becoming an expert musician, becoming an expert at anything as a kid, which begins as a hobby, begins as a passion, doesn't always even have the potential of becoming a career, but it does show the individual that if you put your mind to it and keep hustling with it, the same way that you can master the guitar, you can master almost anything within your own physical limitations.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I think that's important is I don't want to lose sight of the fact that you began by saying that in your first job, you were so bad at sales that they took you out of the sales job to another job within the company. And yet your greatest success came when you doubled down and committed yourself to learning the craft and becoming an expert in sales. And the reason why I juxtapose those two things together is I firmly believe that as parents or as young people or trying to inspire young people, having a passion that a person can become great at is something that we often don't realize will have a different impact on the next generation. I loved to play basketball when I was a kid. I never had any aspirations of playing in the NBA.
Mhm.
I'm a short white Jewish kid, which is never going to happen. But I recently interviewed on this podcast a friend of mine who was much better than I. And he also didn't have any aspirations of becoming a professional basketball player. But together, putting in those hours in anything, you can't put I guess a kid can put the hours in at sales, but nobody does. But putting the hours in on the guitar or on the basketball court later in life says, hold on, I believe this is Tom 20, I would assume Tom 27, 28-year-old Tom, right? There's this thing, they told me I wasn't good at it. I can't really figure out why I'm bad at it. I feel like if I put my mind to it, I could do it. And that's how I'm going to make the money. That's how I'm going to be successful. Instead of turning the other way and saying, I'm going to run from it, you lean into it because you know that you can become a master. And becoming that master of the craft has led to your success. And furthermore, and please correct me if I'm wrong, then when you see that success, as you said, each derivative was just another step up and another step forward, but built on the same foundations. And I think that when we talk about keep hustling, that's what it should be about. It should be about someone realizing that life evolves. Sometimes evolves because a person is so successful that they exit or make a pivot. Sometimes life evolves because a person has an injury or a disability. Sometimes life evolves because that business failed and you got to move on to the next one. But the person who's willing to evolve is the person who will ultimately see the success.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I mean, I've always, and I don't know where this came from because it wasn't I don't remember learning it, but I've always been, when bad things happen, when things get impossible, everybody's freaked out. I've always maintained this vision or this view that don't stress about the things you can't control. Look at what can you control? What do you have an impact on? Okay, that's your tool bag. What can you do with it? An example of that would be, I've got product made in China right now for my current business. We've been in the process of moving out of China. We started 18 months ago, which ends up working out well, but the tariffs hit. And I'm a member of a Vistage group, a CEO group. We meet once a month. I went to my last meeting and everybody's like, geez, we figured you'd be on life support with all the stuff with the tariffs. I'm like, no. I said, guys, look, I can't control what these guys are doing. I go, I can control what I sell. I can control how I sell it. And I was fine. We weren't stressed at all. We made some changes. We're actually introducing a new product line that's got me cranking right now. That's actually a very good product for us. So you just have to look at and focus on what you can actually make an impact on and not get mired down in all the noise, all the crap that goes on. So many people do that. They allow all the stress. They can't sleep. They're going crazy.
But had you not had the experience, meaning had you not, quote unquote, had you failed as a musician and not had an outside factor force you away from it, I'm not sure if you would have seen that. Meaning you were forced at that moment to make a radical, drastic pivot in your life plan. And now you're able to see that, is my point.
I didn't look at the time, I didn't look at it that way. At the time, it was just, my rent is going to come due.
No, that's my point. I'm not saying, now let's look back.
Yeah.
Part of what we do at Keep Hustling is try to dig into the how of how people, of how successful. That's my point, is obviously then it's very hard to see it. But you're able to say now that a person should block out the noise and block out the stress and keep going, keep hustling. I believe in large part to the fact that at one point you had to do it with no choice. Now you can do it with a choice. Now you can choose to say, I'm not going to stress over the things that other people are stressing about. I'm not going to allow that to get to me. But then you just have to keep hustling through it. And I think that it's that learned experience, that muscle memory of the hustle that has led to your incredible success.
I don't know. I will tell you the process of becoming a very good guitar player. I was a practiceaholic, and there's playing and there's practice. And most people don't know how to practice. A lot of good musicians don't know how to practice because it's not playing. It's not playing a song. It's sitting there with a metronome. And I loved the process of practice. It's call it a bit of an Asperger's spectrum disorder. I don't know, but I would sit there with a metronome because, again, your brain doesn't have a concept of time. So you practice painfully slow, but perfect. Now when you go to play a lot faster, it just comes off so nice because your brain has built the pathways. And I mastered that at a pretty young age, the concept of that. I take that now to everything else I'm learning, trying to do. And I've tried to find ways to practice what I want to master. And some things some things you can only gain by experience. Some things you can actually practice. The beauty of telemarketing, I got into it. Again, I was horrible at it, but I said, I've got to figure this out. Well, what can I control? I can't control what the customer says if they say yes or no. I can't control. I can influence it. I can't control it. The only thing I figured I could control was the number of calls I made. The average guy in our company made 75 calls a day. I was 220. The owner was blown away at how many calls I made. In fact, this is the early days of computers. He actually had a guy write a program for me, an early dialer, to see if I could make 500 calls a day. So I had a computer system dialing for me. I was only picking up the phone when somebody was on. It was pretty hokey, but it was actually pretty fascinating. And for me, I knew when I make 100 calls, I'm getting 2 sales. Now, these are when you sell somebody, you're building repeat customers. I'm selling them something they use every month. So I just started on that path of building this database of customers, and that's when I started making money as a salesman. And the whole SecureIt thing just happened because I thought it was cool. I'd never owned a gun. SecureIt became the primary supplier to the U.S. military. I designed and patented a system that completely revolutionized how armories function. They don't know it, but I'd never owned a gun.
But that is having the eyes that are open to the opportunity and not being afraid to dig into it and chase it.
And not looking at, everybody else is saying, we got to store these guns. And I don't know anything about it. So I'm just going like, well, they're like brooms of different shapes. What are the problems they're facing? Well, the problem they're facing is complexity. And I went to Home Depot, and I called it Home Depot development, walking the aisles, looking at how things are stored and just trying to get ideas. And it boiled down to my whole system is one moving piece. No tools are required. It can hold any gun in a special forces arm, from a small submachine gun up to a shoulder launch rocket system with no tools, adjust on the fly real time. My competitors' systems have hundreds of brackets with screwdriver tools and all this stuff. It takes hours to change the racks. And we just
did it.
Simple.
Keep it. My father used to say, keep it simple, stupid.
Yep. Innovate and simplify is our motto here.
I want to pivot. I really never do this, but your bio fascinated with the way it was written. I want to read another line from your bio. Known for shaking things up and challenging the status quo, Tom fosters creative conflict and encourages his team to unlock their potential. I'd like to focus in on Tom fosters creative conflict.
Yep.
What is creative conflict? What should somebody do who's listening to this podcast who feels that their job, their business, their company is filled with conflict, and that's a negative? How can that be spun to a positive to then encourage teams to unlock their hidden potential?
Creative conflict, it's a two-part system in that people, people that work for me, I have to empower them and make it safe for them to challenge me directly on my ideas. That's the conflict. Tom, I think you're nuts. This is crazy. I said, what's the problem? We'll sit and talk about it. And I've got to let them know that, I tell all the people I hire, new people, I say, look, in a vacuum, I'm going to do exactly what I think I should do. I'm going to do it very quickly, and I'm going to keep moving fast. The problem is sometimes I'm wrong. I need you, when you believe I'm wrong, or when you see something different, you need to stop me and say, Tom, stop. I need you to look at this. I will stop. I will look. I have no ego attached to what I'm doing here. I don't care. The goal of this company is to make America safer and better prepared. It's not about me and my freaking ego or anything. I just don't care. And so that's the goal, is to get everybody to say, I don't want a yes man. I need people to feel comfortable to speak up. The other side of it is creativity. From a very young age, we suck the creativity out of human beings in the way we raise people. Part of it's natural, part of it's not, but people always say, babies say the darndest things. Kids start talking and they say stuff that is just absolutely precious. It's hysterical. It's pure because they have no filters. And you're getting pure creativity. They go to school, they're in kindergarten, they speak up on something goofy and everybody laughs. You're like, ooh, I better not do that again. You're getting later in school, you want your peers, your cliques, you want to conform, and it's probably natural human behavior from a survival mentality to get everybody to herd mentality and not stick out too far. And that goes through college into, you see these like corporate boardrooms where it's so stiff and dry. It's unbelievable. It's my belief in business that, hard workers you can hire hard workers. What's missing, the missing link is creativity. The companies that can harness creativity are the ones that are going to thrive in the world as it is now, in my opinion. And that's what I'm always trying to do, is breaking people out of their comfort zone. I refer to the company as a band of misfits out to change the world. That's very calculated. That was put together sentence by me because I want everybody to hear from me. Hey, we're all misfits. I didn't go to college. I run a company. I'm kind of a loose cannon sometimes in my company, sometimes because I want to be, sometimes because I'm trying to push this narrative that it's okay to be unhinged a little bit. Not in a negative way, not disrespectful, but just, we're only going to be here once, as far as we know. You got to grab every day, every single day, and just, at the end of each day, I look back and say, what did I accomplish? What did I learn? And if I don't have a good day, I might make some notes down and say, tomorrow I got to do better. And, but I'm kind of getting in the weeds here a little bit, but getting back to the driving, especially young people, to be who they are when they're all alone in their bedroom, listening to music, singing, or singing in the shower, or that when you're quiet in the car by yourself to your own thoughts. I need those people in that state working for me. I don't want people coming to work, putting on their work persona and doing their corporate job. And I see a lot of that in the business world.
I love that. And I think that there's so much, and thank you for sharing in such depth. There is so much today that revolves around fear. And I think that the best leaders are, and obviously, I'm not going to get into politics, but a lot of what makes business owners scared is the fear of a lawsuit. But let's just put that aside from the business owner's perspective. I think that it's those business leaders, those managers, those mentors who can harness the power of mentorship. And the only way you could do that, as you said, is by inspiring those around you and proving to those around you that you want their opinion, you value their opinion, and you're not going to crush their opinion, especially when they disagree with you, especially when they say pause. My family's in the risk management business, the insurance and risk management business, and we still do insure a lot of medical centers. And one of the challenges that we had, especially in the surgical setting, was that many nurses and PAs and assistants didn't feel safe or comfortable or confident enough to challenge the physicians in a setting, in the operating room. And the reason was because they felt that they might get reprimanded by challenging the authority. So we actually developed a whole line of products that were to call a timeout, which is a subliminal way of saying to the physician, hold on, there's somebody in the room that thinks that something is going wrong. We don't want to call you out in front of the patient, disrespect you, call out your expertise.
Right.
Just stop for a second. Let's all regroup. And we saw a tremendous amount, not only of success in limiting errors and lawsuits, but also in the collaboration. Because when you create and foster a safe environment, then all of those around you want to collaborate more. They want to be inspired to contribute more than they would if they were just collecting a paycheck and being a bunch of yes people. And I think that so many people in the world claim that they don't want yes men and women, but they really do. And they claim that they want that culture. They really do. And it's those that prove to themselves and those around them that they don't want it, that they're going to embrace, as you said, creative conflict, or as your bio says, creative conflict, that see the greatest success.
I didn't start off like that. I think you get there a little bit. After I had some successes behind me, it makes it a lot easier. I think in the early days, we're all out to prove that we're the whiz kids. We're all out to prove that we kick ass, that we do whatever we're doing. I don't think I was receptive to other ideas when I was in my 20s. I mean, I was listening and I was learning, but I still think I had a little, it's not arrogance, but just, I don't know. I think as I've gotten older and I've got to a point in my life and my career where I don't care. I don't need to make more money. I don't live an extravagant life, but I've done all that. It's just, now it's more about, let's turn this organization into something really special. Let's change the lives. Our core value is improve the lives of others. And for me, it's it's taking my employees and getting them to a point in life that they just couldn't have gotten to by themselves.
Do you believe that you would have been better off if you realized that earlier? You said you didn't realize it off the bat. Or do you think that you have to evolve to get to that? That's a certain level of maturity.
I've spoke about this to many groups and many times, is I waited too long to get good at this. And that's one of my regrets, is I wish, and what I'm saying is I waited too long, is it was in 2011 that I realized I've got 3 companies that all grew to 3 to 4 million in sales and all sat there. I was the common denominator. And I realized it must be me, because now SecureIt had so much potential. I'm going, you know what? I'm a $4 million a year guy. because that's what I do. How do I solve this? So I started seeking out, looking at coaches, and I hooked up with a group called Vistage, which is a global CEO peer group. I'm a member of a group in Albany, New York. We meet once a month as CEOs of companies between $5 and like $200 million a year in sales. And we all meet for a full day and hash out things. I've got this whole group of people that know me well and can help me solve problems. And then I worked with a business coach. And it's when I really realized I was a manager. I wasn't a leader. Managers max out at 5 million because managers kind of do everything and you're hiring people and you're managing this. And that's the $5 million window. I maxed out at 4 because of the structure of the business. So then how do you not do that? Well, the first thing, you delegate every single thing you do. And I was like, you do what? I want anything to do. So I made a big sign on my wall in my office. I said, what are you doing right now that you could delegate? And I started just delegating everything I'm doing. Say, hey, I need you to take care of this. Do you understand what I want? Good. Hey, and all of a sudden, the employees start doing a lot better. And all of a sudden, I'm no longer in the trenches. I'm now looking up going, there's opportunities here. And all of a sudden, things started happening. I hired a gentleman I knew. He ran a company that I used to buy from. He sold his business. I hired him for a 3-year contract. His name was Frank. I said, Frank, I need to teach me how to be a CEO, a real CEO, because I was a salesman. This was all happening at the same time. And between that, Vistage, and just me really going on a path of really focusing on being a leader, not running a business, we made Inc. Magazine's fastest growing companies in America twice in 3 years. And things just started taking off. We shot up to 22 million in sales pretty fast. We're at another ceiling now. We're kind of bouncing. We've been here for a little bit. And so now I'm digging back into this. What's our challenge? Well, got to build out some middle management. I've got some, that's me taking over the role as the chief marketing officer for the company now. I've been through 4 heads of marketing, and I finally realized I can't hire a head of marketing. It's what I do. I'm a sales guy. I'm a marketing guy. So I am now the CMO, and I've got Brad, my number 2, is running the rest of the business. I'm totally immersed in marketing. So now this is to get the company over the next hump, which will be getting us into the $35 to $50 million range.
Love that. And I love the evolution. I love the story. I love the pivot. I love the constant hustle and the constant taking just a little bit further step and practicing what you preach. Tom, as you know, we have a tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational or inspirational quote.
Sure.
What it means to them. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you. Say thank you again for being here. Thank you for being from Syracuse. Thank you for sharing. And the floor is yours.
This came from my dad, and it's not some crazy deep. It's very practical. But he always said to me as a kid, he said, Tom, don't worry about what people think of you. And he didn't laugh. He goes, because for the most part, they don't think of you. Now, he meant that second part of that to really not to be like nobody cares about you, but to mean everybody has their own problems in life. Everybody has their own issues. You may do something and think, oh my God, everybody will think I'm an idiot. No, they really don't think about you. But there was a time in my career where I really worried about what other people think. And when you're worried about what others are viewing you as, it kills you. It's so stifling to actual creativity, to actually, the people who truly change the world really don't care what other people think. They're not motivated by that. They're motivated by I call it a higher calling, however you're going to call it, but I guess that's the simplest way I can put it. But I get that may come back to just be true to who you are and what you want to do and focus on that relentlessly.
I love that. Thank you so much. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling with my guest, Tom Kubiniec. Thank you so much again. Remember, do well by doing good and always keep hustling.
All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.